Welcome to Project Freelance. How's it going? My name is Kay Anagonio, and I am your host here on this podcast. This week on the podcast, I am speaking with Melbourne-based photographer Andrew Bromley. Super excited. This guy retweeted or tweeted something at me on Twitter, and I was like, hey, I haven't spoken to any Australian-based photographers, so let's get you on this podcast and have a chat about what you do as a freelancer. So before we get into this episode, there are a few housekeeping things I need to let you guys know about. First of all, at any point in time, if you like what you're hearing, please leave a rating and feedback on this podcast. It helps the podcast grow, it helps other people find us, and it gives us a little bit of notoriety within the freelancing community. So if you do that, take a screenshot of your feedback, send it to me at Project Freelance on Instagram or Twitter. I will get a hold of you and I will actually send you a signed photo print that I have taken as a way of saying thank you for doing that. Thank you for supporting the podcast. The second thing I need to let you know about is that I have a book out called No Tracers, an Urban Explorer's Diary. It is a photography book full of photos and stories of my urban exploration adventures. See, when I'm not freelancing, I actually explore abandoned places. And I would love to get you a signed copy with a couple prints as well. So if you guys want that, or if you're interested in reading more stories about urban exploring, go to notracers.com and you can get the book at notracers.com/shop. Thank you guys for supporting my artwork. I appreciate it a ton. And the last thing I need to talk to you guys about is that we have a partner on this podcast, and it is Liquid Death Water. And if you've never heard of Liquid Death Water, don't worry, because I've got an ad coming for you in 3, 2, 1. From the streams of the Austrian Alps comes a new kind of water. A water that is sure to raise you from your grave. If you're tired of buying cases of plastic water bottles that contain carcinogens and God knows what else, or if you're trying to lower your waste footprint, Liquid Death comes in beautifully rugged aluminum cans. Murder your thirst with a can of Liquid Death. Check the link in the description and use code JustTheLetterK at checkout for 10% off your order. Liquid Death. Murder your thirst. So like I said in that ad, if you guys want a discount on Liquid Death Water, use code JustTheLetterK at checkout on liquiddeath.com or hit the link in the description. It will take you directly to the affiliate site and it will automatically apply that coupon code for you. All right, so without further ado, Andrew, can you please introduce yourself and what it is you do to the Project Freelance audience?
My name's Andrew Bromley. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and I'm a music photographer and videographer.
So let's go back. Take me back to the very beginning of your photography. How did you find your love for this? How did you catch the bug?
Jeez. Going far back, it's probably about 6 years now. I was going to a gig in my local hometown, and it was, what was it? I Killed the Prom Queen,
nice.
Ghost Inside, Bury Tomorrow, a bunch of some local acts as well, just in my local hometown in a hall. Which was really strange for Ghost Inside. And a partner I was dating at the time was like, oh, you've got a camera, why don't you just bring it along? And I was like, oh, yeah, may as well. And took it along, asked the venue if I could shoot. They said, yeah, it's fine. It's no worries. It's all ages. You don't need to worry about it. Just don't go on stage. And I started shooting it. I thought, oh, this is pretty fun. Edited hundreds of photos, posted them because I thought, oh, pretty sick. But looking back, they look pretty terrible. But that's when I caught the bug and I thought, this is pretty sick. I think I could do this a bit more. And it wasn't until probably the next year that I started fully kind of jumping into it and going to gigs and upgrading my camera and trying to give it a go.
So fun fact about me, I actually started live music photography in Perth at YMCA HQ. That was my first.
Really?
Yeah. So I grew up overseas. I lived in the Middle East from the ages of 16 to 19. And then when I was turning 20, my dad had a job offered to move to Australia, to Perth, and he asked if I wanted to go with him to finish graduating from my bachelor's degree. I went to SAE Institute out in Perth, and so literally the first day we were there, we tried to go see Make Them Suffer play, but we didn't have local IDs, so they wouldn't let us in the venue. So the next day I found out that they were playing a show at HQ, and that was an all ages venue. And I was like, okay, well, I just got this camera. I might as well go and start taking some photos. So my first show that I ever shot was the second day that I lived in Australia. And so it was it was such a cool experience because like when I was living in the Middle East, I was listening to bands like I Killed the Prom Queen, The Ghost Inside, and Make Them Suffer, these amazing bands. And the more I got into the local music scene, the more I fell in love with Australian music. Can you talk a little bit about the music scene out there and what it's like to be a photographer in the Australian music scene?
God, that's a really hard question. Yeah, I wasn't really much of a music buff back in the day or back before I started photography. I was really just like, I would go to a concert with my dad and that's about it. And it'd just be at a big stadium. But I ended up just like, as soon as I started doing photography, I started learning about all the different venues all around Melbourne and all the local acts that were playing. I started kind of learning from friends and becoming friends of friends of friends of so many people and just started going to every show. And I more so skew towards like heavy music. That's just where my love is, and what music I enjoy the most. And it was just a bit of an overwhelming experience to see such a diverse kind of like audience of kids my age, or my age at the time, that really loved heavy music and that just got so enthralled into the whole process of it all. Going to local gigs, like all ages gigs, were just like insane. Seeing kids younger than me getting into it, crowd surfing, moshing and all that jazz was so insane to me, and thinking like, wow, this is something I'd never expected to be a part of. And over the years, I just saw it grow and grow and grow. And I think, yeah, Australia has like a huge heavy music scene that's just like unparalleled to most places. Like you just don't see it anywhere else really. But it was insane to see the amount of talent that we have throughout Australia. Like especially in Melbourne where I live, it's just like there's so many amazing acts that I've seen countless times and I could see countless more times. But yeah, the music scene is just an incredible place.
And what a cool like avenue for somebody to get into photography because it's so readily available. There's so many shows and there's just things happening every day there, especially with this heavy music, and like I remember seeing North Lane for the first time. I remember seeing Parkway Drive on their 10-year anniversary tour, and man, like just the memories that you make when you're out shooting. Can you talk about some of your favorite bands that you've gotten to shoot?
Oh, that is really good. Probably like all-time favorite was Panic at the Disco. That was like my first like really big show at a place called Festival Hall in Melbourne, which is just like a big, not like it's kind of like a midway between arena and then just like a normal venue. That was probably my first show and first like a huge act that I've ever shot. That was amazing. Brendan Urie was like an absolute blast to shoot on stage. He just had so much charisma about him, which was just amazing to photograph. What would be another one? Definitely 1975, which was last year. Their whole stage setup is absolutely insane. And I'd heard so much about them and I had friends who loved them and I just didn't care less. But after seeing them, I was just like, this is a band that I need to listen to because their stage show was insane. They had choreography, they had dancers, they had big, huge LED screens. They had all this like setup for this one show and it was insane. Who else? Jeez, I'm trying to think of some like smaller shows that I even went to that were just insane. We have like a festival here in Australia called Unify. I've shot it twice, and that first year was like Parkway Drive, Tonight Alive, was it Make Them Suffer, Hands Like Houses, like a bunch of like premium Australian acts, and like Straight from the Path as well. So it was really good first year for a festival, and it was absolutely insane to go to something like that and have all the best of the best Australian bands playing. That was really good. There's a few like local shows that I really loved that were insane, like Invasion Fest, which is like a Melbourne based festival that was just in a small underground kind of like conference area in a hotel.
Nice.
And that was pretty insane. And I think we had like Kubla Khan and Acacia Strain a couple of years, which were insane. And then just recently they went to Sydney and had like Knock Loose, but those Melbourne shows were just crazy. They had like two stages. One was like the big stage and one was a small like cramped stage where everyone was right against everyone. And they were just insane to shoot, just to get up in close with everyone and get some pretty crazy shots. And now I'm pretty stoked that I've been able to shoot some well-diverse bands across the years, but yeah, not much else comes to mind. There's probably a few others, probably like Hilltop Hoods. Gosh, who else? can't really think of anyone else at the moment. There's a few, yeah. There's a few like smaller shows where I was just like, I was happy to shoot that, but I can't remember at the time.
For sure. So going from like shooting all ages venues where they'll basically like let you walk in with a camera and shoot without like a press pass. We have venues like that are similar here in Southern California. For example, we have Chain Reaction where you can just walk in with your camera, start taking photos. Everybody knows about Chain. It's pretty, known worldwide. So for you, how did you go from shooting the smaller venues to getting, press credentials to shoot bands like Panic at the Disco and the 1975?
That was kind of a weird process because I was pretty much freelance for quite a while. It was more so just like cold emailing people and just like trying to get in on shows. I then ended up becoming friends with a guy named Mitch Lowe, who I absolutely froth. His work is amazing. He did a lot of like festival runs here in Australia and does like a lot of stuff with like DJs. He was one of his friends who I'm good friends with was like, hey, look, we're doing, we need Melbourne people for this kind of publication that we're doing, and we just need a lot more people. Would you be keen to join? I'm just like, hell yeah, like put me in, like I'll absolutely do it. And so I signed up with them and joined their group. And that's how it kind of started. And pretty much like I wouldn't have gotten, because every time I would apply for a big show, they'd be like, oh no, you can't, no freelance because you need a publication. That was just the way it was. And I ended up just going with him. And anytime a show came up, I was just like, cool, I'm just going to put my name down. And it was pretty much like first come, first serve, whoever booked it first and whoever put their name down for it first. And that was just like awesome to get all those like very, very lucky opportunities that I wouldn't have never got if I was by myself. Like if I was by myself, that would have never happened.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. It's definitely a lot easier when you do have publications behind you to support what you're doing. And I mean, I've had the opportunity to shoot for publications before. I worked for Alternative Press Magazine for the full year of 2017, got to be on Warped Tour, filming content for them.
I saw that.
Man, it was such a cool experience. And so I just encourage people that are listening to this episode, like if you guys are trying to shoot these bigger shows, try to find a publication. And it doesn't have to be a big publication, it could be like a small magazine or even a blog online, just reach out to them and say, hey, do you guys need content at this show? And, a lot of times you will get access to this kind of stuff. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about social media and how it's helped you as a content creator, as a freelancer, and as somebody that uses it probably for networking as well.
Yeah, well, I wasn't very much a big social media person. I would just post like random shit really on Instagram and Twitter and all that jazz. It was just like basic stuff. And then once I started doing photography, I was like, I'm going to fully put myself into this. Like pretty much I think like 99% of my Instagram is just photography. Like that's all it is. There may be like a photo of me or my family every now and then, but that's it really. And I kind of pushed myself a little bit further into that where I've gone, okay, cool. I can tag bands. I can network this way. And I've had so many bands message me, or even just band members themselves message me and be like, hey, look, can you shoot our show next week? Like we've seen your work, really love it. We heard from this person, or we saw you tag this person in this photo. And networking really helps. I've always had an email where I say, hey, email me here so you can book a show with me. Never happens. Like it's all social media. It's all Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Like that's the only way I've gotten shows. And that's the other way where I've hit up bands because I was just like, I have no idea, no Facebook, no email, no nothing. It's like, cool, I'll just bloody Instagram message them because that's the last resort I've got. And, maybe half the time it works. So it depends on if they even see it. But networking really, really pushed me a lot further in terms of gaining an audience and gaining actual more friends as well, because all of a sudden friends from out of state who saw my photos were like, hey, cool, can we have you to come and shoot our show? And then I became friends with them. And then their friends would see it and go, oh, cool, we'll get him next time we come down to Melbourne. Or even I had friends who came down to Melbourne for a show, shot their show, and then like a couple of weeks later, they were like, hey, look, we're doing a tour next year in like January. Do you want to come along? Like, we really liked your shots from that show, and, end up going straight into that. Like, networking is very, very integral and very important to like my career in general. At the moment, it's a bit of a dull period due to COVID, but it's definitely important in terms of like building your brand and building yourself as a creator.
And what outside of shows do you shoot as well? Do you shoot other type of photography, or do you mostly stick to live shows?
Usually stick to live shows. I sometimes do like promotional shoots with bands, and then I usually kind of do family stuff as well, and like my girlfriend as well. So we just like whenever they need kind of like photos, like whether it's like friends who need it for a business or anything like that. I usually just go and take photos for them, and that's really kind of where I sat. I used to do a lot of like cosplay work as well. With my mother was a part of a like a Star Wars kind of group, which do like charity events out here in Melbourne, and they do a lot of like Star Wars events. And so I would go and just do free of charge and just like shoot photos for them and shoot socials for them and do big group shots and all that jazz, which was super fun just to kind of experience and see like kids having fun with these people dressed up in Star Wars clothes and being like enthralled by like, oh my god, I'm standing next to Darth Vader, it's crazy, and just seeing smiles and grab it was super fun. Haven't done it in a while, but just because there's been nothing to do, but it was a really fun experience just to like dip my feet into like a social space really rather than a music space. But that's kind of what I've been mainly focused on is music, but just on the side I try and do a little bit different here and there.
Sure, just to like challenge yourself and give you like a little bit of variety with your shooting. I totally get that.
Yeah, exactly right.
How long did it take from going from a hobby to getting paid to do this kind of stuff? Like how long was that process for you? Because some live music photographers will shoot for free like for years and years and years until they're like, oh wait, I could be getting paid for this. Like wait a second.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. I don't think it was long, from what I can remember. I started shooting in September of 2014, and I think it might have been somewhere in 2015, like mid 2015. It was just like my friends. It was like friends of friends, and he was just like, "Hey, we're playing a show in this like, it was like a what was it? It was a very very small venue. It was probably like maybe for like 50 people. It was a really small venue, and they're like, "Hey, we're shooting the show. Do you want to come? And like we'll pay you." And I was like, "Oh yeah, cool. Like I'm happy to do it." Like I kept saying like I was happy to do it for free because I was like super positive with my work at the time. And they're like, "Oh no, we'll pay you. It's fine." And he's like, "How's $150 now?" I'm like, "Really? Just for shooting photos?" He's like, "Yeah, we like your work." I'm like, "All right, cool. I guess I'll do that. That's fine." And I went and actually like rode with some of the band just because they were just like carpooling together. Like, "Oh, you can just come with us and we can all go together and shit like that." I was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds sick. We'll do that. That works pretty well." And that was like my first kind of foray into like getting paid for it. And then I kind of just every now and then I do shoot for free, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, "Okay, cool. Well, I need petrol money, so maybe I'll just like charge for petrol money and to get to the venue and back or something like that. Just something to keep me by." Like I was working a casual job, which I had like kind of like full-time hours, but it wasn't mandatory that I needed to be paid. But probably about a year, maybe a year or maybe less than a year that I got paid. But it was pretty interesting just to get offered to be paid. And even when I said, "Oh no, don't worry about it," they're like, "No, we'll pay you. Like we need to. Like we'd feel bad if we didn't." It was very interesting to see that kind of pop up in my way.
Yeah, and it's cool that the bands were supporting you in that way. A lot of smaller bands that are playing those smaller venues don't really have a budget for it. So the fact that they made sure that you got something for your time and your efforts is really cool. I think that's absolutely amazing. Most of the time when I lived in Australia, I was only there for a year, but I think I shot every show for free. I don't think I got paid to shoot any shows, but I didn't care because I was just starting out and I loved it, and I loved being in the scene, and I loved being a part of it. And I do these vocal covers on YouTube, and so a lot of the international bands from America that would come to Perth to play knew me from my videos, and they would invite me to shoot the shows. So that was like a really cool opportunity to like network with American bands, because I knew one day I was going to be moving back to America and I would want to tour with those bands. So it was very interesting, and I think it's interesting that you're self-taught, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I only did, oh gosh, I probably did like a course after I finished high school of like, it was like one like section of a course that was like photography, but it was like shooting plants, so
Gotcha.
it wasn't too much. And then I did a little bit in like media side in terms of like video and like how to shoot like we were just like doing some acting stuff, and it was just filming that really. And that's kind of where I got into the videography side, where I kind of like that. But I've done everything self-taught, YouTube tutorials, other people, just like learning off the cuff really. Like there's a lot of stuff that I'm just like, I'm so disappointed that I didn't learn how to do earlier. But I definitely went through just like the self-taught route for it all.
I love that. I think it's great, especially when it comes to like doing a creative trade like photography and videography. I think that being self-taught can actually take you a long way. Maybe you won't learn everything at once because like you said, like you wish you had known a couple things like earlier on. Like I totally get that and can relate. I went the film school route, and I studied cinematography and things like that. And honestly, I wish they had let me get more hands-on experience. So being self-taught, you're just diving into that like hands-on experience. And so I think that it can most of the time actually benefit you more to be self-taught than to go and try to study it in a formal classroom setting, because they don't really give you a camera and say, this is what an f-stop is. Like you still have to figure that out on your own at the end of the day,
Yeah, exactly right. And that's just like, I still get questions to this day of like, what's an f-stop and how does aperture work and how does ISO work? Like I had a friend like literally last night was asking me, he's like, how are you so good at photography? And I'm like, lots of bloody practice, like just practice. And I was like, just giving him, he was like, oh, I'm watching these people to get ideas. And I'm just like, yeah, exactly. Just YouTube tutorial, just watch people. And like I sent him someone's Instagram that had like a bunch of like information on ISO, aperture. I'm like, just learn this. So, like, it's so simple. Just because he, wasn't too sure on how to do everything. He was just starting out, photographing for just in general. But it's definitely like a hurdle that you have to take, whether it's like you learn it, in an educational base or whether you learn it yourself.
Yeah, totally. And I love that, people come to you as a photographer to ask you those questions. I think that, as somebody that is a freelancer, you have a lot of wisdom when it comes to teaching other people. So I think it's great that you're like giving back to people and helping them in that way. What gear do you shoot on? Are you Canon, Nikon, Sony? What do you shoot on?
I was Canon. For many, many years. Now I'm shooting Sony A7 III and a bunch of like pretty much I've only got Sigma glass, and that's it. I had a Canon 5D, and I had a Canon 5D Mark III, and then a Sony A7R, which I bought from a friend who was just selling his, and that's where it kind of got me into the Sony game. And I just jumped in full on. I sold my camera, sold everything else, and just had my Sony. And then I just bought a bunch of Sigma lenses, which are like the best things in the world. Like I couldn't be happier with what I've got now. I'm probably not going to upgrade for another couple of years anyway.
Yeah, Sigma. I shoot behind the scenes content for Sigma sometimes, and so I get to use their lenses, and I think they've got the best glass. I think that they are far superior to anybody else on the market. So big shout out to Sigma lenses. Thank you for creating great stuff. You guys are the best. So we've talked gear, we've talked how you got into the game, we've talked how you built yourself as a freelancer. So I've got one more question for you, and that is, what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
Oh, God. When I started, I kind of wish I learnt quality over quantity. That's definitely something that I was completely in the reverse. I was all about quantity over quality. And it was a pretty interesting base where the first show I shot, I uploaded every photo. I didn't cull any, I didn't edit any. I just uploaded every single photo to like a photography page that I created. And I was just like, guys, look, I shot these photos. Look how cool they are. And there's like hundreds and hundreds of photos that I'm like, why did I do this? And yeah, I learned that like over the years, like I think for the first couple of months and first couple of shows I shot, I just uploaded like all the photos. Like I very rarely culled any and deleted any photos that I was like, no, I'm not happy with this. Like a lot of them I was like, oh yeah, they're all good. And I would just put them up there. And over the years I was just like, look, man, I just got to put on my best like 20 photos. I can't put 130 photos up. Like that just makes no sense.
Right.
And yeah, I'd probably absolutely go with something like quality over quantity, because it's just, you find your 10 best out of like 500,000 photos. It's like, that's the best 10 photos you'll ever take. Like that's where you should kind of lay your groundwork, is like, okay, cool, I've got these 100 photos and only 5 of them are really good. It's like, cool, 5 of them are really good. Keep 5. Don't, succumb to being like, oh, but I like this photo, but this is shit. It's like, all right, cool. We'll try and see if you can fix it. If you can't fix it, then leave it. It's try get the best out of it for your portfolio, because that's just where I stumbled a lot. And that's where I kind of went, oh crap, I need to be able to show off my best work and only my best work. I don't want people to go back to the start and go, oh, he's uploaded like 500 photos of I Killed the Prom Queen. Like, this is a bit weird. It's like, no, you don't need to do that. You can upload like 20 photos max of like a band and be like, yep, that's perfect. That's the best 20 photos you'll have. But yeah, definitely would be quality over quantity. Shooting in RAW, I did not shoot in RAW for a very long time, and didn't quite know what that was. I can't really think of anything else I would really learn. No, I got nothing else. No, that's probably the only 2 I would really be like needing to learn. And probably like editing in Lightroom, like learn to edit, like learn to do stuff. Like I didn't learn at all. I would just upload the way they were until I started getting into presets and started like making my own and going, yep, cool, I found my style. Like that's probably the 3 I would say that would be my kind of go-to.
Perfect. And if bands want to reach out to you to maybe book a shoot with you, or whenever shows come back to book a live shoot with you, where can they find you online?
So on Instagram and Twitter, it's just Andy Brom, so ANDYBROMM, and that's it really. That's really the only 2 kind of socials I use. I have Facebook, but don't use it too often. But yeah, I've only got Instagram and Twitter, so they can always hit me up there, or they can hit me up in my email, which is, with my Instagram. But yeah, no, that's the best way to contact me and book a show if you're ever interested.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on Project Freelance and sharing your insights and your stories with my audience. I appreciate you taking the time.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Really happy to do this.
All right, guys, that was my episode with Andrew Bromley. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you taking the time. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and feedback so that I know. And then if you do that, take a screenshot and send it to me at Project Freelance on Instagram or Twitter, and I will send you a signed photo print of a photo that I have taken as my way of saying thank you for listening to this podcast and for supporting it. If you guys want to support it further, I do have a Patreon, which is linked down in the description. And I also have 2 bands. I'm excited about music, Chasing Satellites and Matriarchs. I also have solo music out under Kay and Agonio. I'll put all the band links down in the description if you guys want to check out my tunes. Other than that, I will talk to you guys next Monday for another episode of Project Freelance. Again, my name is Kay and Agonio. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out, and go create something.